On paper, weight loss advice can look super simple. Eat fewer calories than you burn. You want to lose weight? Easy, mate, just eat less, move more. Yeah, that'll be $100, please. From a physics standpoint, this advice is always true. But in the real world, this advice can simultaneously be as useful as a chocolate teapot. We are actually complicated little fuckers, and there are lots of behind-the-scenes factors that can influence how much food we want to eat. So let's discuss one of those. Emotional eating. Most of us can already acknowledge that emotional state will influence how much food we want to eat, at least on some level, right? Cliché movie example. Perhaps you've just gone through a messy breakup and for some reason it seems impossible to do anything other than snuggle up on the sofa and cry into a tub of ice cream. But this isn't just a binary switch which is either on or off, and it isn't limited to one emotion either. For example, one study surveyed participants and 73% believed that they snacked more when they were stressed. And there was a tendency to shift away from meal-type foods like meats, fishes, and vegetables. So emotional state doesn't just impact how much food you want to eat, but perhaps your food preferences as well. Which probably isn't massively surprising, if for no other reason than if you are really stressed, it's likely that the number of fucks you give about preparing something nutritious is probably going to decline a little bit. Let's face it, if your boss has been a massive dick splash to you at work, and you come home after a long day to find your partner asleep on the sofa and your young children drawing on the walls in permanent marker, you're probably not going to think, you know what would make me feel so much happier? Spending hours in the kitchen preparing a nutritious meal. In another study, participants were asked to rate their emotional state and their desire to eat at specific times over the course of several days. It found that their desire to eat was heightened during periods of negative emotion, such as anger, highlighted in yellow, and tension, highlighted in green. Participants tended to use food as a coping mechanism. And lots of people don't talk about this stuff. Weight loss advice is frequently boiled down to just telling people they need more willpower, as if that's easy for everyone to just summon up out of the abyss. I need more what? Oh, more willpower. Fuck me sideways. Didn't think of that before. You are a genius. Believe it or not, there's actually a whole body of literature looking at how emotions can impact food behaviour, including sadness, stress, boredom, and even happiness. Now, this is a pretty tricky thing to study because there is a very narrow scope of how much you can influence someone's emotions, for ethical reasons. You can show a group of participants a sad video clip and see how much food they eat afterwards. That is totally legit. What you cannot do is take the same group of participants and kill their pet to see the impact of fucking extreme sadness. Likewise, you can put a group of subjects through a controlled stress test, but you cannot turn that stress dial up to the max by telling them that their boss is going to fire them and their partner's having an affair. So there is a discrepancy between the type of emotional stress that can be imposed on you for study purposes and the type of stress that life might occasionally kick you in the genitals with. But an alternative solution is to use a real-life stressful event. One early study took a small group of men who were scheduled to have a hernia operation, and it looked at how much food they ate the day of surgery when their stress levels are high, and a month after surgery when their stress levels were lower. And it concluded that when men were stressed, some of them would eat more and some of them would eat less, i.e. stress eaters and stress fasters. Similarly, another study looked at students preparing for an exam, and they compared food intake the day of the exam when stress levels were high and a week later when stress levels were lower. Once again, people tended to respond in different directions, hence the term hypophagic and hyperphagic. These small examples show us that how much food we eat can be impacted by real life stress. But to build on these, later papers needed to create conditions that were more measurable. Rather than using a small group of people who are shitting their pants because they're about to go into the exam room or the operating theatre, you can use a standardized stimulus like a video clip and more precisely quantify the results using a larger group of subjects. One study let subjects watch either a happy or sad movie clip and then gave them a selection of foods where they could eat as much as they wanted. Subjects who were classified as high emotional eaters ate significantly more food after watching the sad movie clip, whereas low emotional eaters didn't change their food intake at all. Basically, if 100 people watched Titanic and cried when Jack was left to drown, unnecessarily, some of those 100 people may gravitate towards speeding up their popcorn hand, and others may not. Another study got subjects to watch a 40-minute movie clip, specifically designed to evoke negative emotions by representing common real-life problems. Participants ate more food after watching the negative movie clip, and they did this specifically by favouring unhealthier food items, once again showing that emotions can influence your food preferences. Which makes sense when you think about it. I've never heard of someone who was so sad they wrapped themselves up in a ball and comforted themselves with some nice refreshing cucumber slices. Rather than watching a movie clip, another study put subjects through a controlled stress test, and once again they showed that on average, People ate more when they were stressed, and there was a subgroup of participants who responded in the opposite direction and ate less. Another study tested the impact of boredom, either by showing people a normal video clip for 60 minutes or a very short video clip played over and over and over again for 60 minutes. And during the boring video condition, subjects ate significantly more of the M&Ms that were placed beside them. These are small-scale experiments demonstrating that changing someone's mood can influence how much food they want to eat and what type of foods they want to eat without them even realizing it. Which brings us on to a much bigger and more complicated issue. Have you ever been through a bad period in your life, whether it's sadness, stress, whatever, and noticed that your behaviour around food just crumbled to shit? Perhaps your motivation to work out fell to -17. Well, what would happen if you took that exact same emotional episode and dragged it out over time? If we know that some people will gravitate towards food when they feel a little bit sad, what would happen if they felt really fucking sad, like coping with the death of a family member, or if that sadness stretched out for a really long period of time, like chronic depression? This isn't very easy to measure because you can't exactly take a group of people, split them into two, make one half of the group depressed, and see if they eat more food over the next 20 years than the other half of the group that aren't depressed. But many studies have tried to untangle this complicated relationship. For example, here is a meta-analysis of 16 studies concluding that people with depression were at a significantly higher risk of developing obesity. And another study concluding that there was a significant and bi-directional relationship between depression and obesity. In fact, one review paper concluded that for people with high emotional eating scores, it may be more effective not to jump into a calorie-controlled diet, but instead work on emotional regulation skills. And this is one example of why I think a lot of weight loss advice is super fucking patronizing. Because going around telling everyone that it is easy to just eat less, move more, is a bit like telling people with depression that it's easy for them to just cry less, smile more. Whilst it seems simple on paper, for a lot of people it just isn't that fucking easy.